Motion tracking and rotoscoping are two features that go very well together. Let's see how we can use motion tracking to make our rotoscoping job much easier. Let's go to the future section composition and go to its last frame. Let's zoom in. And our producer has told us that this shininess on the face is distracting, and so we need to get rid of it. What we'll do is we'll draw a mask around this area, apply a blur just to the area within that mask, and then track the motion through the scene so that that mask follows the motion and only applies to this area here. Motion tracking specifically refers to analyzing a movie and following the movement of an item in that movie so that the data about that movement can be applied to other items composited in later. It'll be a little tricky to track this shiny area, so what we'll do is we'll track another part of the face and then offset the tracking data that we get from that part of the face onto this shiny area. What we'll do is we'll track the eye. Open this layer in the layer panel by double-clicking it, then choose Track Motion. Zoom in a little bit. I'll zoom in with the scroll wheel on my mouse, and drag the track point onto the eye. This outer box is called the search region, and this inner box is called the feature region. What After Effects will do is go to the next frame and look within the area defined by the feature region to see if it can find pixels that match the image that it sees here in the feature region. Let's go ahead and click Analyze Backward, or actually in this case, Analyze one frame backward, just to see what happens. Note when I click Analyze one frame backward, After Effects moved this search and feature region to track the eye. This is a keyframe that shows where the eye was in the previous frame, and this is where it found it now. So if we keep pressing Analyze one frame backward, I'll just press it somewhat slowly, one time after another. We see a motion path building up that's tracking the motion of the eye through the scene. And the track is holding just fine. Even if it were to slip a little bit, we wouldn't mind, because we're not going to be applying the tracking data to something that needs extreme precision. But so far this looks really good. I'm going to zoom out a little bit so that we can see a bit more of the scene, and then keep hitting Analyze one frame backward. And I'll just keep going until we reach the end here, or I could click Analyze Backward and just have After Effects do it all at its own speed. Let's do that for a moment. And I'll stop there, because as soon as this glare appears here, we don't really need to worry quite as much about this shininess distracting, because everything in the scene is very bright. So that's about where we'll need to begin our compositing work. So now I need to apply the tracking data to a target, but we haven't created our solid color layer yet to be our adjustment layer. Let's do that now. Choose Layer, New, Solid. Let's make it 100 pixels by 100 pixels. It doesn't matter that the color of the solid is red, since we're just going to use it as an adjustment layer. And then here, choose Edit Target, Red Solid 2. OK. And I'll drag a little bit so that we can see the bottom of the tracker panel, and I'll click Apply. Apply dimensions X and Y. Sometimes you just want to apply the tracking data in just the horizontal or vertical direction, but in this case, we'll apply it to both. And now we see in the composition that our red solid has been placed over the eye. I'll zoom out and drag the current time indicator so that we can see this result. And there, the red solid is following the eye, as we expected. Now what we want is for the red solid to follow the shiny bit below the eye. First, I'm going to drag the red solid so that it's below the desaturation adjustment layer. Then I'm going to press P to expose its position property. Click Position to select all of the position keyframes. When you select all of the keyframes, then when you drag the layer in the composition panel, all of the keyframes will be offset by the same amount. So I'll drag it down here to cover the cheek. Now, I'll make this solid an adjustment layer by clicking its adjustment layer switch, and it disappears, but I can still draw a mask on it as long as it's selected, which it is. I'm going to zoom in, and with the pen tool, draw a mask. Now I'll drag down here in the composition panel to give us a little bit more room to see, and so that we can see our effects and presets panel better. And here I'll type box blur, and I'll drag the box blur effect down onto our adjustment layer. I'll make the blur radius 3 and the iterations 2. And here we can already see that the blur has made the shininess less. If I turn the effect off and then on, you'll see the result. But you'll notice if I press Ctrl-Shift-H to hide the layer handles that the edge is a little bit too sharp. So let's feather the edge here. Press F to show the mask feather property, and feather it by a few pixels. Now, 5 might be a bit too much. I'll just do it by 3. And zoom out so that we can see this at its regular size. I'll click the Effects button again to turn the effect off, and then on. Yes, we've definitely diminished that shininess a bit. Now the real test is to drag the current time indicator back and forth and see if we've gotten it throughout. So here, look there. As I turn the effect off and then on, yeah, it's considerably less distracting now. But let's see where we might run into a problem. Let's go back even further. Now I'll press Ctrl-Shift-H and select the layer. Maybe even better to just hide the motion paths. With the composition panel active, we'll go to View, View Options, and choose to not show the motion paths, not their keyframes or their paths or their tangents, but we're still going to see the masks. Click OK. And notice that our mask is encroaching on the arm a little bit here, and we don't want to be blurring that. So we need to animate the mask shape. So let's go to here, where it first might become an issue. Zoom in. And let's click the mask path stopwatch to animate the mask shape. First, it looks like I might just be able to move the entire mask up a little bit. That's a better positioning, it looks like. You can also use the pre-transform bounding box to scale or rotate or position the mask. And if we double-click that again, we get back into the mask editing mode where we can select individual vertices. So if I drag a box here, I select just these two. If I click one, I just select that one. So I'll just select this one and drag it up so that we're just blurring on the face. And then we'll just go ahead a frame at a time for a little bit. Maybe move that one a little bit down. And this one a little bit up. And I'm just pressing page down to move ahead a frame each time. If you're really doing proper rotoscoping work, you often will not go ahead a frame at a time, but instead jump ahead from the beginning to the end, and then to the middle to a frame that looks bad, correct it at the bad frame, and then count on After Effects to interpolate the differences in between. But since we're only doing a few frames here, it's not really too much trouble to just go a frame at a time. And there. Now that the arm is out of the way, we shouldn't have any more problems. So zoom back out, press Ctrl-Shift-H to hide the mask handles. And there. Now we have a considerably less shiny face throughout. So what we did is we tracked an item on the face, then we created an adjustment layer and attached it to that motion tracking data, and offset it to another part of the face, drew a mask on that adjustment layer, and applied an effect so that it just affected the area within that mask, feathered the mask, and then animated the mask shape so that we didn't include something that we didn't wish to in the scene. Basic rotoscoping and basic motion tracking.